What's up, everybody? We'll wait for some people to file in here, and then we will start the show. I'm going to eat a little dinner here before Derek shows up. I'm about 6 minutes early. I just figured I would smash my dinner real quick. While people file in. Oh, I forgot to email everybody. Shoot. I got to do that. Sorry, I forgot. I got to send an email out. Hello, Keneji. I forgot. I got to send out my email. What's up, buddy? Yeah. Yeah, I forgot I didn't send out my notification email. That usually gets a couple dozen people.
It last week.
Mm,
So this is muscle meat.
that looks super
Like this-
fresh, dude.
It is. Like, let's see, where is this? It's like a little piece of the colon fat. Like, you don't realize, but this is actually a piece of the colon fat.
Oh, yeah?
And yeah, the digestive tract of the sheep, it's just completely encased in a layer of fat. And then it's really sweet, really good. So it fuels the process of their ruminant. They have to process grass
Yep.
and use bacteria to turn that into energy. And it's a factory. It's a process of, from start to finish, the fermentation and then the absorption of the fatty acids and the proteins from the bacteria, and it turns grass into food. And so this is probably the greenest energy you could possibly imagine for human beings.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and I feel like some of that, even if it escapes the animal, I feel like it's still food because I don't know if have you ever actually eaten like a cow patty or anything like that before?
No, I've eaten the sheep pellet. Like whenever you clean out the intestines, like
Yeah.
there's little pellets in there, and sometimes I've just chewed them right up with the fat.
Yeah,
And
we went up to the Rocky Mountains, and my wife, we went hiking up in the Rocky Mountain National Park, and she was like, or when you get into like bear, so this kind of gets into like one of the questions I wanted to get into, actually. One of the topics, I guess. We went on a camping trip this weekend and met this really interesting guy. He'd been on like a couple survival shows. He's like he's a bow maker. He hand makes bows for archery. And he's like a multi-generational come from a bow making family. Like, he's a really cool dude. And somewhere along the way, as we were talking around the campfire, it came up that he was on a survival show alone,
Mhm.
and I was like, I thought I heard that, and I was like, wait a minute, I was like, you're on TV, and I asked him about, it. I was like, what show were you on? And then he got into it a little bit, and then we started, they were asking me also, kind of like, what got you started on raw meat and stuff like that, and we were talking about that. But he said he knew a guy on the show that ate a raw muskrat and just got totally infested with worms, and they were like in his brain and shit.
Mm.
And I didn't really know what to say about that. I was just like, well, I don't know. I mean, and maybe he had something to do with his diet prior to the expedition. Maybe his body was set up for parasites before that. Like it gave them a bunch of things to digest. I don't know. I didn't really know what to say about that. I couldn't really just spew out the standard autogenous wonderplanets, parasites are great for you thing, because that really wasn't going to convince these guys.
Mhm.
But
And
what would you say to that?
maybe it's not our place to convince these guys if they're not living in a pure way. And that muskrat, where did it come from? In our
Hmm.
system. And yeah, maybe there is a negative effect, but if you go downstream there's all these other conditionalities, which means that you probably weren't ideally healthy going into that experience. Okay, like take back history. Like every time we learn about history, they tell us about how life was brutal and short, and people would get a little cut on their finger
Hmm.
and it would get infected and gangrene and they would die, or they drink a little bit of dirty water and they'd get the cholera, diarrhea, death.
Right.
And this something that we're told is just what a way of life. This is what happened in history, and life was brutal and short, and you could just get a little mosquito bite on you and it gets infected and you die.
Hmm.
And so wait, let's unpack that. Like, what kind of condition were these people?
Right.
Maybe you develop leprosy. Maybe something else happens where, yeah, you end up losing a limb.
Yeah.
But what are the underlying conditions? And so we have to go there before we talk about, well, it's the bacteria that got under the skin, because I got bacteria under the skin and somehow my immune system is able to push it out and cleanse the tissue without any problem. And
Right.
so the
Yeah.
healing capacity of the body is weak to begin with. If you get a little cut or eat maybe some bad muskrat and get a parasitic infection, your body's innate immunity might not be in optimal condition to begin with.
Yeah. So a part of me, so I'm all on board with like the bacteria stuff. Like uh I don't have a hard time conceptualizing like that we have a microbiome, we have a skin biome, brain biome. Like for some reason that's easy to understand for me, that there's bacteria everywhere. And
Mhm.
that if you're, let's say you have like a low gut biome, you nuked it with antibiotics or whatnot, and then you go out and drink a bunch of pond water, or you eat a bunch of raw meat, like you might get sick because it like disrupts your system somehow because you didn't have like a natural balance already. That's easy for me to understand. Like the worms thing, I still kind of struggle with. It's like I struggle. I guess I'm still fighting the idea that we naturally like have worms in our bodies all the
Mhm.
time, or I'm also struggling with the idea of like how when you eat a muskrat, um, do the larvae stay encased? Like, do they escape our hydrochloric acid somehow? How do the worms come from like a muskrat into the body? Like, how does it survive the stomach acid? Is it, got any idea?
And I mean, there's different parasite life cycles, and different, yeah, species of parasite have different methods of infecting the host. So we could go. It depends on exactly what kind of nematode we're talking about. And
No.
our ancestors, who evolved eating raw, one factor where you can say if this person eats that worm egg, they're going to be infested with the brain worm. And it's just, I don't ever see that. Like, for there's,
Yeah, I know. I know. That's my thing. And like, you hear it all the time with salmonella. That's like the most common one. It's like
oh,
salmon.
yeah.
People love talking about salmonella. Oh, my kid, my child got salmonella when she was a kid from chicken. Blah blah blah. It's like, okay, whatever. But that one I can kind of laugh at. But like the worms thing, it's like, when I first discovered autogenous wonder planets and read his ideas on parasites, blah blah blah. People ask me about parasites. I just sort of parrot what he said, but I don't really have like an understanding fully of what's going on. I thought I did, but as I get more into this stuff, I start to like doubt myself a little bit and I question myself somewhat because like I think that's a good thing too to do that, to sort of go, okay, wait a minute, like do I really know what's going on here? Like is God the only one that actually knows exactly what's going on? Probably. And there's so many people that act like they know what's going on. And it's like we're all just taking stabs at it, stabs in the dark, kind of exactly trying to describe what's happening. But one thing I do know is that the fear part of it is that's totally demonic, and that comes from the darker realms. So like all of the fear surrounding like raw meat and raw chicken and like raw liver and raw milk, that's all totally demonic. And so on a higher level, like I totally understand that part of it, and I think that's the most important thing. And I do know just anecdotally that if you source good meat, um, meaning like from local farmers, grass fed or pasture raised chickens with no chemicals, then you're not going to run into these issues. Because otherwise, I figured that I would have at this point. And the one time that I did not do that, I ate raw venison and I got sick. So I do know that food poisoning is real. I experienced it twice. It was the only two times my entire life I experienced it, and it was from raw venison. And I ate it 2 days in a row and got sick twice, and it was the only time I sourced it outside of my normal farmers. So those are the things that like I do know. I do know sort of my experiences, and that's what I report. But yeah, the worms thing. It's like it's when people bring up those stories. Some guy got worms in his brain. It's just like, oh man, I don't know what to tell them. But you're right. It's just people will just bring up one story. Every case is different, and that's. I had a good answer for him at the time. I can't remember exactly what I told him, but I basically said something like it might have had something to do with the way he was eating before the trip his whole life, and then he got in there, ate the muskrat, and it somehow gave them an environment to thrive. But also speaking of muskrats, which this is a different animal, but my dogs ate a groundhog. We went to a park one day. This is years ago, and they found a groundhog, and they got on each end of it and they ripped it in half, which was the craziest thing I've ever seen in my life. But they ripped the thing totally in half, and then they ate it. And shortly afterwards, she got worms. The female got worms, and they got fleas. So I don't know if it was both all from that groundhog or what, but I thought it was interesting that they ate that, and then shortly after they got worms. And I let it run its course with her for like a matter of months because that was what Augenist recommends: let the worms run their course, blah blah blah. And I'm all about that. I just watched her health and demeanor, and it didn't diminish. But after a while, I started to doubt that, and I actually bought some pills off of Amazon.
Money behind the treatment of these conditions. And so
Mhm.
we don't know for sure, does our animal need to be treated, or does it just need to be run the course and feed it organically and raw meat as it's its nature, and
Mhm.
it would cleanse itself naturally? It's impossible to tell. And it's like, I've heard, I think my mother was telling me like years ago when I was growing up, they were doing autopsies of people in certain regions of the country. And in the Southeast specifically, there's maybe anywhere from 7 to 20%, depending on the region, of the autopsies found trichinosis. And
Mhm.
so, depending on what region you lived in, like certain soils are just naturally higher, and some people in the deep south eat a lot more pork and undercooked foods that might have trichinosis. So,
Mhm.
what's it mean? Like if these people have these trichinosis worms in their body, and they're not even discovered until they die of old age, in the 70s and 80s, and oh yeah, they had all these evidence of the trichinosis infection, but there's asymptomatic. And
My-
so what does that mean?
I know, and that's like the same thing with my E. coli 0157.
Mhm.
When they diagnosed me with that, and it's like I had absolutely no symptoms at all of what they were talking about. And it's like, what the hell is that? Um, so
I
yeah,
mean,
it's all.
I've had episodes like there's once like early in this diet, I was just desperate. I didn't have a lot of food, and I ran over a possum in the middle of the night, and as this country road, and there's just big fat possum. I ran it over, and I was like, man, my grandmother used to eat possum. that was one of their favorite dishes. I think it was served at my great grandfather's funeral. Now they
Mhm.
cooked it, but so I took it home and I cut off the leg, and I just ate some of the leg meat, and it was pretty good. And then I didn't bother to gut it at first. I was just trying to taste it, and then I cut open its gut, and then all these roundworms pop out.
Oh,
I've
wow.
already, I've already, I've already eaten part of it, and I'm like, oh,
Mhm.
there's these roundworms here.
Mhm.
I was like, do the roundworms exist in the muscle
Mm.
tissue? And I don't think they do,
Hmm.
but anyway, I didn't have any symptoms. I didn't eat the rest of it just because I wasn't sure.
Right.
So, but I've eaten that, and not getting nothing up, that it's starting to get slimy. They were starting to turn, and
Mhm.
I ate them anyway. I ate them anyway, and I got probably what they call salmonella. And
Mm.
there it is. So there wasn't a reaction, and I call it salmonella. I wasn't eating the optimal food. I wasn't storing it properly. There was all these other conditionalities, but yeah, you can illness for others.
Mhm.
And where does this lack of immunity start? Why can't we just let our children collect eggs from the chicken coop barefoot, have them clean out the chicken coop and,
Mhm.
and scoop chicken waste with their own hands, and
Mhm.
sit there and dig in the compost, and have this barrier, this micro barrier of all these microbes just inundated from an early age. And just
Mhm.
imagine you were nourishing these children off of the raw food and off of the cleanest, purest food of the land.
Mhm.
They would develop an immunity that would be unsurpassed. And
Right.
all this nonsense about salmonella and E. coli doesn't mean a thing to these
Mhm.
people who have natural immunity.
Right.
It only has meaning to people who are living separated from nature and isolated from the biome. And so there's these people out there that, like you, like me, develop natural immunity, and we're having to have conversations with people who are indoctrinated into
Mhm.
the germ theory, and you can't get them to understand the nuances that
Mhm.
you're talking about. People who are isolating themselves in a hospital environment, everything's over sterilized, and then yeah, somebody gets a resistant strain of bacteria, and they die, or they get really really ill and sick, and they
Mhm.
blame the bacteria, but they never talk about the broader context. And
Mhm.
so what's happened now is there's bacteria resistant, or antibiotic resistant bacteria. And there's these super funguses that are developing now, because everybody who ever gets a little fungus gets antifungal creams. And so, like, a lot of the candida and a
Mhm.
lot of the, like, ringworm, athlete's foot, all this stuff is becoming immune to the treatments. And because they've just using these chemicals to kill, fungal infections from the body, and it's just not working because the microbes are developing immunity. And
Yep.
at the same, the resistance, that the weakening of the overall health of the average person. And so you
Yep.
put these two together, and yeah, you're going to have a lot of people with infections,
Mhm.
but don't blame the bacteria.
I know. I know, it's silly, man, and I feel like I've been posting stuff, like, lately, like, you've noticed, like, I got stabbed by a rusty nail, and now I got, like, ringworm on my ankle and stuff. I've been posting stuff like that, just kinda being funny, because 'cause I'm just like, "Oh, no, what am I gonna do?" You know? Because the
Mhm.
average person, it seems like, just freaks out, and it seems like everybody wants to medicate everything, like your situation with your got your finger cut, and then you got, like, a little infection, blah, blah, blah. It's like, how many people would, like, put Neosporin on that, or or even get, like, some kind of herb, you know? And I feel like
Mhm.
it trickles into the holistic community too, because it's like, when I posted that thing about the ringworm, it's like I got so many people telling me, like, what to put, like, put beef tallow on it and, like, herbs and all this stuff, and I'm like,
Integrity, and it opens them up to things like athlete's foot and fungal infection. So you don't really have to treat them with anything. What you need to do is air the feet out, maybe soap and water, wash it cleanly and
Mhm.
let the oxygen hit the skin. And
Mhm.
then it takes time. And then over time that the tissues will heal if you don't have, a suppressed immunity or some other type of toxicity going on.
Right.
But the tissues become toxic from time to time. They become irritated and inflamed, and they do become prone to these conditions. And these conditions are a sign, a signal of an underlying imbalance. And so you have to read those signs and act accordingly. And sometimes it's not intuitive, and sometimes we're not really taught well how to care for our basic health. And so we don't know what natural is anymore. And
Mm.
we lost a lot of our instinct as well. So we don't know
Mm.
instinctively what to do. And
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah. It's
amazed
I was gonna. I was just gonna say, like, it seems like, okay. So one thing I want to talk about is like herbs and essential oils, because I went down this whole essential oil rabbit hole this last couple weeks.
yeah,
Uh, because man, yeah, if you want to piss some people off, dude, start talking crap about essential oils, dude. But because there's a lot of people, I feel like it's like a sacred cow a little bit. But I will say this is my experience with it. So um, what happened was damn, I can't remember how it started. I was on YouTube somehow. Okay, so my how it started was my wife told me about the dangers of essential oils, and I'm not going to say like they're all dangerous and all doses or anything like that, but she was talking
about
to me.
the VOCs, like the volatile organic compounds, or just in
Maybe
general.
that, or just like the level of concentration that they're put in, are probably not the best for your body, and
Right.
not exactly natural. So she was talking to me about that, and that's what got us into not putting anything in our tallow balms or anything like that. We don't put any essential oils. We do straight herbal infusions, or we're gonna do, like, we did like a vanilla infusion on our whipped tallow.
Mhm.
So for some reason I got researching into that online. I was on YouTube or something looking up videos. Oh, because I was gonna make a post on it. I was gonna post about essential oils and the dangers of it. And boy,
Explain.
I got all these like information and all these videos on YouTube about it. And then I started watching videos of how people are getting seizures from essential oils. And then I started reading the comments and stuff, and people were saying their dogs got seizures from it. So what happened with my dogs about 3 years ago is they developed a seizure disorder where both of my dogs got seizures, which is very interesting because that almost, they are twins from the same litter, so I guess it could have been genetic. I don't know, but it proved to me that it was probably environmental because they both got it, and it just dawned on me as I was watching these videos. I was like, "Holy crap!" Like the essential oil shampoo that I washed my dogs with when they got fleas probably gave them that seizure disorder. And because I
Yeah.
was like, I couldn't for the life of me figure out what gave them seizures, man. Because I was like, all I do is feed these dogs raw meat. That's it. I don't give them vaccines. I don't give them dewormers. I don't give them flea collars. I don't give them anything. And I could not put it together for years. And here I am 2, 3 years later. I put it together because other people said, when I went into the comments under this shampoo that I bought, other people said that their dogs like almost died from it. And so I just instantly was like, "Holy crap, dude!" So I did it. I made a post on essential oils, and I told my story on it.
Yeah.
And I wanted to know your thoughts on it because it seems like I'm open to the idea that at the fundamental basis of it, like there's probably some medicinal components to what goes into these essential oils, but it just seems like the way they're being marketed, and all these people are just wielding them as medicines for everything, and you put them in vaporizers and you sniff them and you rub them all over your body, and it's like, what is going on here? Like, are these people actually, are they do they know what they're talking about? It's like it couldn't possibly be. And now the more multi-level marketing schemes that are involved in peddling these things, it seems like there's something nefarious inside there. What's your thoughts on that?
Uh, I mean, not just the essential oils, but like if you ever watch any mainstream like video streams with advertising, it's like these new scent bombs that, where your laundry detergent has this super scent that you don't even have to wash your clothes for 2 weeks. People to make informed decisions on what to
Yep.
use.
Yep. Yeah, I feel bad about it. I feel like I almost would have been better giving them like a flea collar, because I'm like, at least a flea collar probably wouldn't have given seizures. But
Mm.
luckily, it's pretty much over. It seems like they only had
It's
a couple apiece, you know. So
a it's a fight with me. Like, yeah, we have cats, and my girlfriend has cats, and every now and then there'll be a couple stray fleas, and so she'll put a flea collar on them, and then I'll take it off as soon as I notice like they're gone. And there's mitigation. Like, we took all the carpets out of the house, and we have a very high power vacuum cleaner. And
hmm
what you do is you just vacuum, physically remove the larva and the dust where they live all around the house. And so it takes a lot more work to naturally do it. But if you keep an environment where they can't nest, and then yeah, you might have to shampoo them once or twice with something, and then use a flea collar for a little bit. But you can get to where you can clear the environment usually, unless
hmm
there's some outward contamination, another, wild nest that's somewhere that they're getting into. But there's ways you can do it, and it just, you got to be meticulous. Like
hmm
picking nits, out of the hair. Like, my kids would get lice every now and then. I'm not going to embarrass them because let's just say it was when they were real little, and but you can comb them out manually. Like, you don't have to use the chemical treatments. And a lot of times the chemical treatments are what's causing this resistance. Now there's super fleas and super lice, and then you have to take it to the next level.
Yep.
And when you can just through due diligence maintain a clean environment, and then the pest will go away on their own if you
hmm
know how to naturally.
Yep. Yeah. It was dude. I battled them for, it was weeks, dude. It
Mhm.
was, the flea thing was an absolute nightmare. I've told this story so many times, dude. But the problem was I didn't notice it until it was really bad, because
Yeah.
I had never experienced this before. So I was chilling on my couch watching TV every night, uh, finding fleas on myself and just like kind of squishing them in my finger and flicking them, and just not even putting it all together. Like, wait a minute, like there's fleas in my house, you know? And then I battled it forever. I have wood floors, thank God, but I vacuumed everything, vacuumed my couches, took all my couch cushions outside. And then I think at the very end, I finally gave up. I spread borax all over my basement floor, like
Mhm.
the powder, just coated my
Mhm.
basement floor in borax, vacuumed it all up, and there were still fleas. Um, and then I finally just had enough, dude, and I bought a bottle of a giant chemical, and I went downstairs in my basement and I just freaking scorched earth all over the floor, drenched my floor in this chemical, which I'll never do again, by the way, because it smelled my house up terrible. But anyways, finally got rid of them, and
Did you
thank
have
God.
did you have carpeting,
Nope, no
or was it?
carpet anywhere in the whole house, and there was still just, I just couldn't get rid of them. It was wild. Well, I had two rugs. I had
Mm.
two big rugs, and they were totally infested in the rugs.
Yeah.
But anyways, yeah, thank God I haven't had an infestation since then. But every once in a while, I'll find a couple on my dogs, which is kind of crazy. But I don't wish that upon anybody, dude. And if you ever have that happen to you, and you wanna meet other people that have been through the same thing as you, just go on YouTube, and you'll find all sorts of people going through the same thing that are like, they're like, oh my God, dude, this is the worst thing that's ever happened to me. My house is infested with fleas. So it was pretty wild. But
Yeah, the main thing is, if you don't let them establish themselves, like, yeah, if you're really
I
vigilant
know.
on that first sighting, you can clear it out a
Yep.
hundred times easier than if you let it go for a few weeks.
Yep.
So it's
Yep.
all vigilance.
Exactly. If you find one flea on you, vacuum and clean the whole house immediately. Change all your bedding, change all your dog's bedding, shampoo your dogs, and yeah,
Mhm.
just do it that way.
And
But I
repeat.
want to
Eh,
address something in the stream here. A lot of people are saying that the stream is lagging, so that sucks. But hopefully it's watchable still, and they're saying that it's on my end because they're refreshing it, and it's, okay. Corey says the stream is doing good for him. It seems like it's lagging off and on, so I apologize for that, everybody. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's the Illuminati at YouTube trying to ban us. But this is the same internet and the same phone that I stream from on Instagram all the time, and it never lags. So I don't know if it's
It's
their software or what.
it's me. It's whenever I show up on the algorithm.
Yep, they got your face. They got your retina scan, dude.
I'm telling you, like I've had other streams, like I've done with other people, and then like my video just
Demonic voices, and they're external and they're not actually from their own head. So, but anyways, my point of that is everybody should check out his streams, Jerry Marzinski on YouTube. They're fascinating, dude. But he noticed that when he gets on streams with people, that the streams will cut out, his internet will break, and things like that. And he thinks they're actually like demonic attacks, because they, you know how like spirits and demons can allegedly interact with like EMF frequencies and things like that. So I don't know. It could be demons, dude.
I've been wondering, like, because demons to us might be angels to others. And so you talk about, like in previous interviews, rules of the realm, where maybe we're not allowed to fly that high. And whatever it is, that little spirit comes in to disrupt and to just knock us down a notch, just so that whatever the other master plan, you know, doesn't get interfered with too much. And so here we are trying to interfere with the master plan of, the angels and fools,
Right.
whatever they have planned for us. And like we're trying to say something completely different. And yeah, why wouldn't those entities try to interfere and try to limit the scope of our reach?
Oh, they
If
do.
there was
They do. I totally believe they're real, dude. And especially if you listen to this guy, this Marzinski guy, he's got personal stories of when he's with these schizophrenics, and demons enter the room and do things, and it's pretty fascinating, man. But yeah, why wouldn't they try to mess up your internet connection? If you're trying to, what we're trying to do is reduce fear and reduce worry with people when it comes to eating raw foods, which is the healthiest diet on the planet, in my opinion, would be raw at them, and you like mock them. So, anyways, that just reminded me of that, dude. The stream lagging. It just reminded me of that because Owen Benjamin had a pretty good interview with that guy.
yeah, like I said, I could go off on some of these other tangents as well, but it's just where where does it end once you go into that realm? Because
It
like I've
doesn't.
had friends and spirits, and I feel the Holy Spirit, and I think it works through us. And yeah, that lack of fear sometimes triggers. And I don't know if it's demons, but in other individuals that I've dealt with personally, that yeah, they just can't handle a certain truth being told. Like I keep laughing at you, in your journey with the doctor on the TV show with the chicken, and just
Yeah,
they can't get through their head that you're happy, you're healthy, and you're not really hurting yourself or anybody by eating raw chicken, but yet they have that mission to just put that fear out there, and they won't let it go.
I know.
And I do it to the next level, and it's hard for me to filter myself, and it's hard for me not to laugh at them,
Oh, I
because
know.
it's just hilarious. Because one of these pilot episodes I did probably 10 years ago, they do the same thing. That it's a routine. They have to have that medical expert to just say, disavow, anything I have to say, and just discredit me. And I'm sitting here eating a jar that has maggots in it, that putrefied sheep flesh that the maggots got infested. And I'm sitting here, yeah, my maggot meat. And the doctor, maggot meat. And it's just where the doctor realizes, we're not in Kansas anymore. And
Hmm.
it would be really, really enlightening to be able to show that to millions of people. But
They would.
the, the editors didn't like where it was going. So, I never really got
You
anything.
took it. You took it too far. You took it too far.
Sometimes you have to. And I appreciate your approach of trying to just be very mild mannered, and just I eat the raw chicken and letting them, just completely deny the reality before their own eyes. And yeah, let that speak for itself. But I just can't do it. I can't stay silent while they're lying to themselves.
I know. Yeah, I know, man. And people, yeah, people I think don't like the interviews. Some people don't like the interviews that I do because they're like, "Oh, it's a terrible interview." Like, they get to say their part and say their message and make you look like you don't know what you're doing. And one guy commented, he was like, "Why are you mainstream?" And someone else.
that had these weird stories, and so they
Hmm.
actually picked the story, and we're showing it to students in Ireland. And so you don't know what effect these little interviews might have. It might get before the right person
I
and
know.
spark that imagination, and then next thing you know, Mike Tyson's talking about eating raw meat,
Hmm.
and people like that are just onto it. And so that will just open up so many more doors. And here
Hmm.
we are, just like Toto, the little dog, pulling back the curtain in our own little lives in our own way, and then just exposing the great Oz for what it is.
We are totally doing that for sure. Yeah, and I'm just rolling with it, dude. Because it's like I got a wife and a baby out of the deal. It's like, what could be better than that? Like, what could God possibly bring me after this? So I'm just gonna keep rolling with it, man. We got a business now. It's like just from eating my natural diet. Like, okay, sounds good, man. We'll just keep
It
rolling with
almost
it.
tells it's a sign, right? You're doing the right thing. You're on your right path. And so when the doors open up before you, you have to go through without fear and just
Yep.
live
Yep.
your life. And
That's what it is, dude. And I feel like speaking of that, a big test was 3 weeks ago when I posted that thing on Facebook with my baby son holding that chicken bone.
Mhm.
And I made a post about how my son loves eating raw meat and we got him eating raw chicken. And holy shit, man, that thing went viral. And I had to cut it off because people were calling CPS. They called the cops on us. They were doxing my address. I mean, it
Did
had, I
you
don't know how many thousands of shares, and it reached, I guess, 250,000 people before I cut it off. But I just, people called CPS hundreds of times on us just for my son holding a chicken bone, and they would have took my kids away, but
the
if
demons?
it was up to them, you know,
No, I mean, you're right. Whatever it is, it's a demonic force, and you're trying to empower your child. You're trying that are so judgmental and hateful. And I had CPS called on me multiple times when I was posting pictures. I had a Facebook account where I had a bucket of guts, and some vegan friended me and wanted me to take that down and said, "That's disgusting. You have to take that down." And I was like, "No, I don't. This is my page and I'm showing people what I do. You don't have to be my friend." And they called CPS on me because they said that my kids were running around barefoot without shirts on and my own yard.
what
And
was going to happen? People would dox my address multiple times, and I had my phone on me at work. I was just waiting for a phone call, just like, hey, who did CPS show up? Blah blah blah. They never came, and turns out they told everybody they don't care. They said we don't care, and so we found out through someone that someone was trying to call him. They said, yeah, this guy said he doesn't care. So I thought that was funny. Uh, but yeah, we're just trying to feed him his natural diet. And it's just hilarious. You can't do that nowadays. And he loves it, man. Like he loves the raw meat. It's unbelievable. Like this is my first experience with the baby, so I don't know if this is like the way that kids normally react to food, but he loves it. Like you'll put the spoon in his mouth, and he'll kind of like he'll grimace a little bit, like that, and then he'll get it
mhm.
in, and then he'll smile, and then he wants more. Like he'll cry that he wants more in between every bite, or he'll whine that he wants more, 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 more. It's just crazy, dude. Like he absolutely loves it. He gets um, like energy bursts afterwards. You could tell he's totally euphoric. Like it's very clear, especially now that he's 6 months. We started him at 5, and he was a little bit into it, and he got a little energy bursts and stuff afterwards. But now that he's like 6 months, it seems like he's really taken to it a lot better. So I don't know what the right time is to feed him,
I'm
but I do know that right now it seems like it's the obvious right time because he's actually chewing it and like swallowing it now. It's not like going all over his shirt. Like he's figuring out how to eat it, and yeah, he's getting like hamburger and egg yolk. So yeah, I like to put that out there because I get people sending.
imagine the type of health and vitality, the type of energy that they could take through their journey and what they could do with that if encouraged properly. I'm a
Mhm.
human. through and through. I think if we empower the average human being with optimal nutrition as well as optimal wisdom, there's nothing we can't do. And
Hmm.
so to have that positive message and to give that to the next generation, I think it's our mission in life as fathers. And I think that there's few and far between people that are willing to go through the links that we go through, but it's worth it. If
Hmm.
we can do it, then it needs to be done.
Yep. Yeah, we're really looking forward to it, man. It's going to be an amazing experience to try to see, like, just to experience like how he's going to turn out compared to other kids, and what his athletic abilities are going to be like. We know he's going to be smart. Uh, Basically talking about salmonella and chicken and all this crap. It was one of those videos where like they take the microscope and they like zoom in on the meat and they like show like they chop it up and put it under a microscope and they zoom in and they show all the stuff and like this is salmonella, blah blah blah. You can get this from eating raw chicken. And I commented on his thing and I was like, I'm not buying it, Doc. I was like, I've been eating raw chicken for 6 years, never had salmonella. I was like, my baby eats raw chicken, my wife eats raw chicken. We never get it. I was like, can you just at least give a little bit of nuance onto the subject and say, if you source, properly raised chicken, it's probably not an issue, blah blah blah. Instead of just saying you're going to get salmonella from raw chicken, and he just never even replied back to me.
Mhm.
So it's like you don't even want to talk about it.
They won't engage. Yeah, they won't. They won't even talk about it. It's
Yeah.
just they can't handle it. It's just so far outside of their comfort zone that they can't deal with it. And so, what do you do when you're talking to people and you're trying to reach out to people who are in positions of so-called scientific authority, and you realize that they don't have a clue? And so, maybe it is up to us to just live an experience and do our own experiments and have our own discussion.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, I agree, man. What do you think about like herbs? My mom's really getting into herbs. It's kind of freaking me out a
Mhm.
little bit, but hopefully she knows what she's doing. But she took this like class for herbs, and now she's all super into it, and she's doing these like seasonal detoxes and all this stuff. And
Mhm.
she did like a parasite detox, and she claims that she found like worms or something in her stool. So I don't know. And she also said something weird. She said that she went outside on a full moon. She said like parasites are more active during a full moon, and
Mhm.
she said that she saw like a bunch of like worms like squirming on the ground during a full moon. And I was like, that's insane. Have you ever seen that?
I guess trigger them to be more mobile. It's I've heard of it. I'm just not quite
Wow.
sure.
Yeah, down the road to integrate in with like raw primal at some point.
Yeah, that's something that I think we've lost touch with because like I'm not really into a lot of herbal therapies anymore. I used to try a bunch. Like I would try everything, like from chamomile to valerian root to St. John's wort and all this other types of herbal stuff. Like I remember when I was going through my health crises, I thought that maybe these herbs had some type of beneficial quality. So I tried pretty much everything, and so I learned sometimes it helped, sometimes it didn't, but nothing consistent to where I feel comfortable advising other people on what to take for natural medicine. And so that's type of a, I'm not sure how much of it is historical or what, but there's evidence, plenty of evidence that our ancestors used all these herbal treatments and they utilized every aspect of nature that was available to them
Right.
and live. And but can we go back? Can we recreate? Can we rediscover what they were doing? And were what were doing, was it always good? We see that's the other questions. Like, how do we know that everything that they did was natural or healthy? It There's probably a lot of people that were using a lot of dangerous herbs and medicines, like the Native Americans that would do the Jimson weed, and the other Native Americans that would eat the peyote. are the mushrooms. And so there's different types for recorded history. We're still living in it. And what we're living through today is no different than what happened in Genesis when they forbid Adam and Eve to eat the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil.
Mm-hmm.
And so what do you do when you're living in a society that just wants to suppress that type of knowledge? And they've done it systematically for thousands of years.
Yeah, I know.
And they cut us off from our nature. People who grew herb gardens and learned how to heal naturally thrived. That is where we came from.
Mm-hmm.
And so my vision is to try to bridge those worlds, go back as far as we can and learn what we can from those people, from those ways of life, and carry that forward into the modern age and integrate it so that we can use those tools. Sometimes I don't always succeed, and sometimes I've had a lot of failures and misunderstandings, but it's just what I do. It's my passion, and there are very few people that I can open up to and speak one-on-one like I'm speaking with you, and like I'm doing it now publicly where there's a lot of people that are hearing this. And so just all I can ask is for y'all to listen and to try to understand where we're coming from, and join the conversation. Like, it doesn't have to be an argument, it doesn't have to be a fight. If you have legitimate questions, we could have a discussion on this.
Yep. Yeah, couldn't have said it better, man. Yeah, I think you went over a lot there, but yeah, there's just, when it comes to like healing and things like that, like there's things out there that we can barely even understand, and like even talking about it doesn't really even come close to touching on the truth of it, like like shamanism, things like that. Like I have multiple books, really good books in my library about shamanism and people that visited tribes and had experiences with shamans and things like that. And it's like, that stuff, you can't even explain what's going on there, man. Like, and some people just think it's cuckoo and it's crazy, but it's like, what, if it's crazy and doesn't make any sense, why are they doing it, and I think some of it's kind of freaky too. Like when you get into like herbal medicines and when you get into plant medicines and experiences like that, it can get a little bit freaky. And I think things that like freak people out, they tend to just they just like block it out and they just don't want to understand it. But like me and my wife talk about this all the time. We're like, just the reason that we're here, like here in this universe right now, is freaky, and people don't talk about that. Like, that's weird. The fact that we're just here right now and we were born and we're gonna die and our spirit's probably gonna live on, and this whole thing potentially goes on forever and ever and ever. And how did it start? How did it begin? Well, if it was created by God who created God, the whole thing is freaky. It like breaks your brain. And so I think that's kind of what happens with people when you get into subjects like this. It kind of breaks their brain and they're like, that's bullshit. I'm not listening to it.
And but it's part of their programming and it's part of their path. And so I'm not saying that the old shaman we should bring up, and start reenacting Paleolithic era shamanism.
Yeah.
And where the priest just dances around in a big animal skin and does all types of kabuki rituals. I mean, that would be a little over the top. And so, but we can appreciate that's where we came from and try to have a little bit of humility that it's amazing we're doing as well as we are, considering that's where we came from.
Right.
And so, where do you want to go? Where do you want to take this human being? And
Well,
I think we take it in a direction, and there's other people, other forces out there that want to take it in another direction. And
yeah.
let's not penalize it. Let's not make it between us and them. Personal, natural forces at work that are beyond the understanding of anybody. Let's just start there.
Right. We getting into all these like psychedelics again. And it feels like we're sort of heading back to that, to where it's like we're gonna need like a shaman or something, or somebody to sort of direct this, because otherwise you're just gonna have people selling DMT on the street corner like they're selling weed right now. And not everybody, I don't think everybody should be smoking weed. I don't think everybody should be getting their hands on weed and DMT and all this stuff. So there should be people like teaching people how to use it, and like for what medicinal uses they should be used for. So I think we're heading towards that again, where it's almost like I think we're going back to like a primal state, because you got this whole raw meat revolution going on. It's pretty interesting, man.
Yeah, and it's happening like what on such a scale that we can't even fathom it, and I
Yeah.
can't really know. I can't be that person. Like I can't be that person to tell you or anybody else what herbs to take and what
Right.
herbs not to, and how much to take, because that becomes, it turns the healer and the magician into a doctor and this professional class that I'm trying to avoid like the plague. And I think
Mhm.
that the modern society has done away with the medicine man and the person who follows their natural instinct. And so I'm just trying to find my own way back to that. And I've found ways that work for me personally.
Yeah.
And so I could start there. And if it works for me personally, I'm pretty sure that other human beings who share, our species and our outlook on life might be able to benefit from that as well.
Hmm.
And so there's a synergy between health and nutrition, ancestral ways of life that are very difficult to standardize, very impossible to put into a university course where you have a bunch of students sitting there taking notes and yeah, do this, do that. You can't have an instructional course on how to live naturally, because that changes from environment to environment, day to day, individual to individual. And
Yeah.
so that's where I'm advocating for, is just a reverting back to the presence of the individual and that connection with the environment. And for me personally, that might be different, completely different from anybody else on this planet, in this realm. And yet me and you share commonalities that we could come together and have these discussions and agreements and even disagreements. And so like that's where the process of discovery comes in. And I think we're rediscovering something that was really just lost,
Yep.
and this connection to our food source. And I'm living on an animal base. We shouldn't have left everything behind. There are some things, valuable lessons that were learned in those days, and I think that we can carry them forward in the modern age.
If I went on Zillow and I found a cave for sale, I would buy it.
You ever do
I
the
swear.
spelunking?
No, I haven't. I,
To the very back of it, turn off your light, and then just imagine what our ancestors would be doing, isolated. And there are people that camp down there. I haven't done it yet, but maybe that's something I need to put on my list.
oh, dude, I would love that. Yeah,
Mhm.
go camp in the middle of the earth. That sounds great, dude. What's your opinion on like biohackers? You know, these guys that like do all this extra crap, like, and it's stuff that, okay, I'm not gonna dog the whole thing, because it's like it's stuff that I've experimented with too, and I still do. But I feel like there's some people that they just fill their whole day up with just doing things, like, I don't know, taking all these supplements and putting all these powders in their coffee and their drinks, and spending an hour in front of the red light, and it's like their whole day is consumed with just doing all this stuff. It's just something don't seem right about it to me. Like, I feel like okay, it doesn't feel right to be stuck there. I feel like that may be a step in the journey, but I feel like there should be something on the other side, or there's something maybe spiritually that these guys are searching for that they don't have.
Go down that road. I
Hmm.
think we can bring in aspects, like hot and cold therapies. Yeah, jump in a cold pond if you want to just shock your adrenaline system and get your blood pumping, and if you want to have a cleansing hacker as well. There's a
Hmm.
lot of things, just fresh air and sunshine, and breathing in deep. There's things that you can do that find what feels right for them.
Yeah, and that's what I feel. I always wonder if there's a void, if when people start these journeys, if there's a spiritual void that actually triggered a lot of these problems, and then they identify it as a material issue or a biological issue, and so they start addressing everything with biological stuff, vitamins and sunlight and grounding and blah blah blah. But it's like, you know, it's like is it because people are thriving for they're lonely? You know what I mean? They're looking for like human closeness. You know, like things like that.
Or
Like it's hard to admit. It's really hard to admit that when you're in. I've been there, man. It's hard to admit that when you're in that place. Like I'm lonely. You know.
and you want to find a way out of it, and maybe if you can't find that human connection, at least you can connect to yourself and your nature and feel better about being
Right.
lonely. And so there's people that, I think that was my journey as well, like feeling just misunderstood,
Hmm.
not able to connect,
Right.
like a lot of just being different in a world where nobody understands you. That's the feeling that, yeah, I've had, probably since real young age. And so just trying to deal with that can lead you down negative paths to where
Yep.
you're just overindulging. You're as a young teenager drinking alcohol and eating fast food and just not taking care of yourself and just being a nihilist.
Yep.
Oh man. I mean, how many teenagers, will go through that phase of
Yep.
just not caring anything and not seeing the value of anything. And so maybe that's a valuable step though we have to live through. And that's the suffering path that leads us to wisdom. And so I
Hmm.
don't deny it. And I understand that I was doing a lot of things that were trying to cope with loneliness and a misunderstanding and just a feeling of what the fuck are we doing here? And so
Yep.
that's the path that I remember very clearly. And
Hmm.
so, and then, yeah, going through the orthorexia and like, oh, if I just eat the right foods and I'll feel better. And then finding some foods that do make me feel better and some,
Hmm.
health practices and supplements that might actually help on some level for some period of time. But then the disappointment, when it comes out that, oh, wait a minute, I still have that void. And I think we still have it. Like even people who find health, they just become prisoners to some other device. Like once they get, healthy and feeling well, they do other things to just screw up their life because that's just who we are. We're human beings. I think we're here to meander and make mistakes. And but I've learned a lot. Like I've learned a hell of a lot more than anybody that would be in a university that has a degree on the wall. I know from firsthand.
Through her has been like really cool. So we're making a community through them, and I've also met some people through my channel that are kind of local around here. So I think that's definitely key. But we still, yeah, me and my wife talk about that a lot. We talk about how we kind of miss community. Because it's like the more you get into this, like primal living or whatever you want to call it, it's like you realize you're like, damn, dude, like the best thing about the whole thing is like your tribe. Like that's the best benefit of it. And she's reading all these books about raising babies in tribal settings, and um, there's a lot that goes into that. It's not just like the mom and the dad. It's like they say it takes a village to raise a baby. Like that's exactly what these tribes would do. So you kind of feel like you're missing out sometimes, but I just tell her I'm like just be grateful that we have my family here. We have some friends here, and then we also have like the online community, which is essentially like our tribe. And it's virtual, but it's still the spirit is the same. So we get.
That's what I found. Like, yeah, and that's how we found each other. I mean, that's that spirit. That's the finding the tribe. And so, I think in my early years, I wouldn't have gotten very far if it wasn't for others that come before that I could rely on. So I used to network heavily,
Hmm.
and some old networks just fell apart. Like I don't know if you know what's going on, but like the world seemed to go a little crazy just a few years back, and
Yeah, I remember.
you remember that.
I
So
remember.
I noticed. Yeah, I noticed some things. Like even before that, like I was pretty sensitive. I was pretty tuned in to the world and what was going on, and so I was in communication with the paleoform people, and a lot of these people were out of Europe.
Mm-hmm.
And what was going on in Europe, like in 2012 and 13, with a lot of these, what I think manufactured crises, was just writing on the wall. And I was in contact with a lot of these people about what was going on, and we talked like for the first time in history. Like people like me and you were able to directly communicate with people in Eastern Europe and
Right.
Western Europe and
Yeah.
New Zealand and all over the place. We were coming together in our affinity groups and discussing and debating and learning from
Mm-hmm.
each other. And it
Mm-hmm.
was really just a wonderful time. And I didn't realize it. I took it all for granted at the time, when I was just coming with this new approach and finding this way of life and this diet and reaching out in small groups, but still real people that you could connect with and that you could actually rely on if you had a question.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was really helpful. And so that's probably what we need to do is, yeah, just try to be there and try to be a guiding light and help other people. And then
Yeah.
by doing that, we'll encourage them to go to their local farmers and to support their, local producers and to try to maybe even get on the boards of their local agriculture commissioner. And so that they can push out like all these negative influences and we can really just on a grassroots roots level uh, initiate positive change and develop the type of communities that we're going to need,
Mm-hmm.
for our children to survive and thrive and for our way of life to continue.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, planting those seeds and
Yeah.
trying to put against all the disruptive forces out there that have broken us apart.
It's not just like a pipe dream. Like you can actually establish community through the internet.
Mm.
Because it's like I said before, like I met my wife and now we have a family, and I met her through Instagram, through my channel, and just it was crazy too because I had my both of my channels had been struck down so many times before that and almost deleted. So like they those guys could have deleted my channel and I wouldn't have a family right now potentially. So it's
Right.
like, but they left me up there. I met her. Now we have a son. I've met you. I stayed at your place for a weekend. You came up to my wedding. I've met multiple other
Mm.
people in person. So it's like we can establish actual communities through the internet and like through this free birth community that I've met around here in Omaha. We were talking to everybody that was there. There was like, I don't know, 6 or 7 couples that all went camping and like tons of them met through the internet, dude. Like I couldn't believe it. I was like, it wasn't just me and my wife. It was like these other people. Like two of them, one couple met on Tinder, and they had a free birth baby and like all this stuff. And it's like, yeah, that happened from Tinder, dude. So like, you can meet people through the internet, and there's a lot of crap being talked about certain apps like Instagram or Tinder or dating apps in general. They can be bad, but they're just like tools like anything else. You can use them to your advantage, and I feel like that's what I've done. And someone just commented the other day on my channel. He said, "I think I'm thinking about just deleting all my social media apps because," he said, "it's just all just garbage. It's all just like mind control, blah blah blah." He's like, "Don't you agree?" And I was like, "Well, it's just a tool like anything else. You can take a hammer and hit yourself in the head or build a house with it. Like, that's what social media is to me. You know, so you can
Yeah.
do what you want with it."
And if some of the theories are true and these are just big giant data mining systems that are going to feed this technological entity, then
Hmm.
we should have a voice on it as well. Like there's no reason why we shouldn't be represented. And so if what happens is we feel insulated and we feel like we just don't have a voice and we should just give up our social media accounts, not participate, not put videos out, not interact with it, well then that closes us off from the rest of that world that is being built. And so I think we do need to be active and we need to be, multifaceted where people like me and you could live in accordance to our way of life and other people could live in accordance to their way of life. And we could still be part of the same world and coexist. And so I believe that in that possibility. And so that's what I'm trying to put forward. And there's other people out there that I think are trying to silence anybody who's in opposition to this one world entity. And so we don't have an agreement. And so we're going to have conflict and we're going to have to
Yeah.
fight. And so
I said you can either be a consumer or a creator. I said be a creator, dude. So many people, I was like, yeah, if you just turn on the app and all you're doing is just doing this over and over and over and over again, that's terrible for your brain. I was like, put some stuff out there, get some things out there. You'll feel a lot better about it. You'll see like a whole different side of it. When you're on the other side, and you'll establish a lot more meaningful relationships with people when you're creating and you're putting your energy out there and your resonance, and then you're going to resonate. Other people are going to be attracted to you like a tuning fork, and then you're just going to meet people that are exactly like you. It's the weirdest thing, you know. So that's
yeah,
what
and that energy, put it out there and it comes back. And so it sometimes with a vengeance. And so, but there's rules to it, and maybe there's a speed limit. Like I always put my ideas out there, and I wear them out on my sleeve. And it's like Mike Tyson would get the satisfaction of
Yeah.
having some of my ideas actually lived out.
Yep. Same here, man. But in the meantime, we'll just keep doing what we're doing and pumping out videos and attracting insects to the light slowly but surely.
Is everything else going good with work and other aspects of the everyday life? Because that's pretty much my 9 to 5. I gotta work as an electrician, pay bills, get kids back and forth, and it's day to day. But it's been pretty nice, like considering, like I'm feel blessed to have it as well as we do. I don't know. You said you started a new job
Yeah.
not too long
Yeah.
ago?
Well, I started a new trade, so I'm putting up metal buildings. Started that in February, so that's been a whole learning curve. Learning how to build buildings. I mean, there's just like about a billion things involved with that. So just trying to do that. Working with new tools, working with new coworkers and boss and blah blah blah. I really like the owner though. The owner, he's a really cool guy. He's uh he's like an eccentric. He's like an eccentric genius type. It's a guy you would never expect to be the owner of a construction company, but he's like an
Uh-huh.
eccentric genius mixed with like a drill sergeant.
Hmm.
So he's a very, very got a very interesting, powerful personality. But he's really funny, man. I love the guy. But
Yeah, that's what it takes to get things done. Yeah, I've
yeah.
learned from I learned from some eccentric masters myself. Like I'm in the electrical trade, and there are thousands of tricks and things that people do you wouldn't imagine
Hmm.
in order to keep the lights on, in order to keep things running. Like maybe most people don't want to know, but
Dude,
yeah,
they have yeah, yeah.
no,
They have no
and it's
idea,
not.
dude. But we were drilling.
Mhm.
We were setting a beam, and
Uh-huh.
we drill holes in the concrete in order to attach the beam with gigantic that you run into, and just you figure out. So how do you get a giant drill bit out of the wall? Well, you take a sledgehammer and you bang the end of it as hard as you can, about 100 times,
And the
and then
vibration
eventually,
break it loose. Yeah. But
yeah,
people have to learn that from experience. There's no other way to learn it. And
right,
so to create this society with all this intricate technology, it takes millions and millions of people like me and you to be a contributing member of human society.
yep, yep, for sure. I agree, man. Well, I pretty much touched on everything I wanted to talk about, man. Is there anything else you want to touch on, or?
I Man, I get so sidetracked with you just shooting the breeze.
Yeah.
Like we should really go into some of this bird stuff. Like there's all this bird paranoia, Chicken Little, like just talking about the end of the world with this avian flu. And have you heard of any of that? Like they're trying to kill all their chickens now. And
Dude, I've just heard a couple things about it, but I don't watch the news at all, so I don't actually know anything about it. But I've heard of a couple people talking about it, and I'm just like, it's just in one ear out the other, dude. I'm just like, oh,
Mhm.
another bird flu. Okay, sure. But it is
Yeah,
crazy though that they go through and they just like genocide whole farms and stuff. That's wild to me.
to try to get rid of whatever the contaminant is, and
Yeah, I
maybe
couldn't.
there's a reason why they're doing it. Maybe there are some mutant strains of
Oh,
chicken out there that if you
yeah.
eat it, it'll just turn you into a complete Frankenstein's monster, and maybe that's what's happening. But
Right.
I'm telling you, it's environmental. Let's go back to 101, people. Let's
Mhm.
talk about how they raise factory animals these days, like
Right.
with the chicken hatcheries, and they have genetically modified feed and medicated feed and all types, and chlorine in the water just so that they don't get the infections. And then so they have this completely scientific laboratory environment where they have chickens living on top of each other, being fed genetically modified organisms and given vaccines for stuff we don't even know.
Mhm.
And then all of a sudden, a couple of them get the flu. Imagine that.
Wow, can't
Imagine
believe it.
chick- imagine chickens getting sick
Impossible. Yeah.
in such a scientifically controlled environment.
Yeah.
You know, oh, surely the science can save us from this problem. And so what's their solution? Oh, let's just kill all the chickens in the factory and then start over again, and then we'll try to find out a new shot that'll help protect the next generation of chickens from the chicken flu, so
Mhm.
that we continue our insane agricultural practices with our astronomical profits, while at
Mhm.
the same time, feeding the people this genetically modified sick meat that they say is chicken, and it doesn't resemble anything like the chicken our grandparents would have eaten, from the farm 100 years ago, but
No.
they call it chicken. And so what we're doing here is it's a complete shell game. They're calling things viruses and saying the birds have a flu and they're all getting sick, when they're really just toxic animals living in a bad environment. And then, yeah, they have to come in and kill every one of them because they're not healthy animals and people shouldn't be eating them.
Mhm.
And so, but they have to have something to blame it on. They can't blame it on the process itself. They can't blame it on the factory farm system,
Right.
because there's too much. Let's see, what can we have? Oh, yeah, it's the bird flu. Yeah, it's a new strain. It's a new strain of the bird flu.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Well, now
take
they're
it.
then they
Of a system that's built upon that. And it's not just the farm system, it's the political system, it's the educational system, the scientific system. It's all these systems that kind of dovetail into the entity that is human civilization. And it's
Mhm.
all operating onto this, I got to look out for me and mine. I have to maximize profit. I just have to do that, or else there's no way to stay in business. And somebody else, the corporate raider, will just come in and do it anyway. And
Mhm.
so that's the mentality. Now, that mentality for economics to resist and don't know enough to ask the right questions, even.
Mhm.
And so that's what I'm trying to do, just ask questions, try to explain things in a way that it's understandable. And it should be common sense once the light bulb goes off, once you realize that the system itself and that food should not be produced using genetic modification and technologies that are so brand new we can't possibly understand the ramifications
I
of.
know. I know. People just don't see it, dude. They just don't see it. And I get it. 10, 15 years ago, I wouldn't have seen it either. If I had like went to college for, I don't know what you go to college for, but then I started like developing feed for animals or something. I was into biology or chemistry or something, and you just you're on this track, man, and like you can't see like
And up, and the awareness up at the same time, so hopefully the supply increase matches
right.
the interest. And that's a reasonable goal. And so I'm in the sheep market, and it's very difficult to find what I'm looking for, because nobody, absolutely nobody in the right mind, will raise a sheep purely off of pasture without any other negative chemicals or inputs and be able to turn a profit. Like,
Yeah.
there's almost no farm I know that will drive down to Alabama to this farm where there's about, I think he's got about 10 to 15 of them that he's willing to sell. He's also into sheepdogs and stuff like that, that doesn't really have a huge amount, a commercial amount, but has a few that he'll sell me. And so I'm going to go try one. And if it's good, then I'll be set for the rest of the year. And that
Good.
is my hope and prayer. Like my food security is banking on this, because the last couple animals like I've been getting were leaner, they're smaller. I can't find anything that's decent.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of other animals that are pasture raised, but for whatever reasons, I just don't like it. Like there's a lot of farmland out there that's just surrounded by corn, surrounded by fields that have been overcut for hay that just aren't optimal.
Yeah.
And so for the struggles I'm going through, like I can't possibly imagine anybody besides you and a few others that could relate to this.
Right.
But understand, like, yeah, that's what I have to do in order to make what I'm doing work. And I don't see how anybody who doesn't have this kind of dedication and passion and outright just will to make it work, I don't see how people can do that on a larger scale. Just intrepid individuals, people like me, people like
Mm-hmm.
you. But maybe over time, once we get the information out, once the interest and the public starts to turn away from their fears and phobias and starts to embrace, more of these natural ways of living, then I think we can scale up and we can provide, for larger numbers of people, bigger communities.
Mm-hmm. Before you go down there tomorrow, are you gonna do you know, like, does he medicate the animals or anything?
No, he doesn't medicate, and I think he feeds them off of hay that's cut on his field, but I also heard like they get peanut hay, which might be just the leftover off of, peanut harvest. So I'm not quite sure about it, but the aerial footage is beautiful. Like I I go through the addresses of the farms and I'll look at the Google Maps and you can see where a farm is,
Mm-hmm.
where it's graphically located.
Yeah.
And sometimes they're up there in the hills surrounded by trees and like maybe a mountain stream that comes off to feed it. And you're like, this is where the best animals I know come from.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where you have to go, to the ends of the earth to find, because on a lot of major industrial farmland, that just doesn't exist anymore. Like all the forests been detimbered and all the land's been used for generations. So I try to find some of these places that are more wild.
Mm.
And there are places out there like that, especially in the Midwest and way out west, and some of these other areas. Like it's out there. It's just how do you get there, and
I know.
who do you there that will raise the animals that you want. So
Mm.
that's what I'm doing. I'm encouraging those people to raise those animals and trying to speak it into existence so that, as interest increases, like the supply will increase and more people will be able to find this way of life. And it
Yep.
might not ever become a majority, but it might be enough people to support, small communities. And that would be
Mm.
good enough for me, at least to carry me through the end of my life's journey.
Cool. Hopefully.
The miraculous is here. It's just
Mhm.
most people can't see it, or if they see it, they're afraid of it. But
Yeah.
we are we are all living the miracle, and the miracle is just what we can't explain and what
Yep.
science is not able to rationalize. But
I know.
yeah, here we are. We're all living miracles, and every one of us, like whether they eat raw meat or whatever, it doesn't matter.
I
It's all part of it,
I
and
know. And
so it's a
imagine if you and I had started eating raw meat when we were 6 months old. Like, the shit we know now, like, you know what I mean? We
in full force. The
Mhm.
neurotransmitters, the young brain, developing in an idyllic scenario.
Mhm.
Just imagine what could be done in the modern world with our knowledge, with our technological know-how, like
Yeah.
with modern technique. If you could bring children into the world that have that,
Right.
child's going to be complete. We'll be able to get closer to that. And the amazing should be explored on all levels. Health problems, I had digestive issues and I couldn't absorb properly. So, like,
Mm.
the raw was essential. And then the ketogenic process how it rejuvenates the organs and the tissues. Like my brain came back to life.
Me
I
too.
was going through such despair and
Mhm.
depression, and my baseline, I guess, hormones weren't
Yeah, me
functioning
too.
properly.
Me
Your
too,
vitamin
man.
D. So all of that, if that could be reversed,
Hmm.
after already being fully grown and after a lifetime of damage, then the power for health and vitality in a generation that was raised without all that negative pollution for 20 years previous. I
Hmm.
mean, it's a powerful thing, and I think that you're about
Oh,
$13
wow.
an hour trying to trying to feed a family of up your picture.
That sucks.
Yeah. Well, when we were at the tail end of it, we can still hear audio.
Yep. Okay.
But
All right.
and I also know how to do more integrated approaches if you do end up having it. And really, yeah, go off of instinct, and the child should be able to anywhere else or just
Yeah, I'll put it on. I'll put it up somewhere. Yeah, I'm gonna have this on YouTube right away, and then I'll